Okay, Rohan, I'm looking at this chapter on financing methods, and honestly, my head is just spinning. We've got venture capital, securitization, operating leases, financial leases. It feels like 100 different things. Where do we even begin to make sense of this for the exam?
I totally get it. It's a lot to take in. But if we strip it all back, every single one of these methods is just an answer to this one big question. So how about we tackle it together, just like a study session? We can go through the ICAI material and build our own guide right here.
All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll look at how those super risky, brand new ideas get their funding. Then, we'll see how companies can squeeze cash out of the assets they already have. After that, we'll get into using big equipment without actually buying it by comparing lease types. And finally, we'll wrap up with the quick cash needed for just, running the business day to day. Ready to dive in? Sounds like a solid plan. So, let's kick off with that first point. What about a brilliant entrepreneur? Someone with a totally game-changing idea, but they have zero track record and no money. How in the world do they get funded? That is the perfect setup for venture capital. So the official textbook definition says it's financing for new high-risk ventures from qualified entrepreneurs who lack experience and funds. The main thing to remember here is that VCs, or venture capitalists, aren't looking at your past. They couldn't care less. They are betting everything on your future potential. Right, and looking at these characteristics, it's pretty clear they're getting a lot more than just a check. This last point here provides business support and expertise. That's really interesting. So it's kind of like having a mentor who also happens to be your investor?
That's it exactly. That's why people often call it smart money. A venture capitalist doesn't just write a check and walk away. Nope. They're in it with you, providing strategic advice, opening doors with their connections. It's a real hands-on partnership, and the one and only goal is massive, explosive growth.
Okay, moving on. Let's switch gears to a totally different situation. Imagine a company that's not a startup. It's well established and it has tons of assets, like maybe a portfolio with thousands of car loans. Now, the problem is those loans are just promises of future payments. What if that company needs a big pile of cash right now so it can issue even more loans?
Okay, I'm seeing the term is debt securitization, and the definition says it's a process in which illiquid assets are pooled into marketable securities. Can you maybe put that in plain English for me?
For sure. Let's think of it like making a fruit salad. A single loan is like one little grape. It's kind of hard to sell just one grape on its own, right? Securitization is the process of taking thousands of those grapes, plus some oranges and apples, bundling them all together into a big, delicious fruit salad. That's your marketable security, which you can then easily sell to hungry investors.
So this slide really breaks down how that fruit salad gets made. Let's stick with our car loan example. Step 1, the finance company has a ton of car loans. These are the illiquid assets.
Got it.
Then in step 2, they sell all these loans to something called a special purpose vehicle, an SPV. Is that basically just a new company that's created for this one specific job?
You nailed it. The SPV has only one purpose. And that's step 3. It bundles all those individual loans together and then issues new investment products or securities based on them.
And then in steps 4 and 5, investors buy these new securities. That gives cash to the SPV, which then pays the original finance company. So the company gets its cash today, and the investors get the stream of future payments from the people who took out the car loans.
That's the whole thing in a nutshell. It's a really clever way to turn locked up future money into liquid cash you can use right away.
That makes perfect sense. You're just getting cash today for money that people already owe you tomorrow. Okay, so what about a different scenario? Let's say a company needs some really expensive machinery, but it just doesn't have the money to buy it. Or maybe it just doesn't want to be stuck owning it for the long haul. That is the textbook case for lease financing. And all the main players are right here on this diagram. The company that needs the equipment, that's the lessee. They don't actually buy it. Instead, a leasing company, the lessor, goes and buys the asset from the equipment supplier. Then the lessee just pays rent to the lessor to use that asset. It's the perfect way to get your hands on essential equipment without having to spend a massive amount of cash upfront. Okay, I see our textbook splits leases into 2 big categories, the operating lease and the financial lease. They sound kind of similar. What are the key differences we absolutely need to nail down for the exam? Great question, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. The biggest difference really comes down to risk and ownership. You can think of a financial lease as being super close to buying the asset with a loan. It's long-term, you can't just cancel it, and if it breaks, it's your problem. An operating lease, on the other hand, is just pure renting. It's short-term, you can often cancel it, and the actual owner, the lessor, is the one who has to deal with all the risks and maintenance.
Oh, wow, this comparison table makes it so much clearer. This is a perfect exam flashcard moment. So, just to be sure, with a financial lease, if the machine breaks down or a new model makes it obsolete, that's on me, the lessee.
Exactly. That risk of obsolescence is all yours. But under an operating lease, that risk stays with the lessor. So if a faster, better version comes out, you can just end your short-term lease and go get the new one. And check out that last point, payout. A financial lease is a full payout, which means your payments will cover the entire cost of the asset for the lessor. An operating lease is non-payout because the lessor is planning to lease that same machine out to lots of different people over its lifetime.
All right, for our final section, let's really zoom in. We've been talking about these big long-term things, funding new companies, getting heavy machinery, but what about the money a business needs just to keep the lights on day to day? You know, to pay salaries, buy inventory, manage all the little things. That's where short-term finance comes into play. So what's the most common type of short-term finance? Is it just getting a quick loan from the bank?
Actually, one of the most common and honestly simplest forms is something called trade credit. The textbook calls it a spontaneous source of finance. All it really means is your suppliers deliver goods to you, but they give you, say, 30 or 60 days to actually pay the bill.
Ah, okay. So for that whole month or two, your supplier is basically financing your inventory for you. It's like the most fundamental kind of business-to-business lending, and it's just built right into how you buy things.
Exactly right. Now, for the really big, established companies, the ones with great credit ratings, there's another cool option, commercial paper. This is basically a short-term IOU that a huge corporation issues directly to investors. It's an unsecured promissory note, which means they can just skip the banks and borrow directly from the market for short bursts of time.
Okay, so that's for the big fish. What about more flexible bank options for just a regular business?
For that, the bank overdraft is an absolute classic. It's simply an agreement where your bank lets you withdraw more money than you actually have in your account, up to a certain limit they set. The best part is how flexible it is, because you only pay interest on the exact amount you've overdrawn, and only for the days you've actually used it. It's super convenient.
And finally, there's a really interesting method called public deposits. This is where a company can accept deposits directly from the general public, sort of like a bank does. And as our study material points out, these are heavily regulated by the Reserve Bank of India to make sure the public's money is safe. It's just another tool in the toolbox for companies to raise funds for their short to medium-term goals. Okay, let's do a super quick recap using this table. So, at the very top, we have venture capital. That's long-term equity financing for brand new, super risky ideas.
Then we have debt securitization, which is for established companies that want to get cash out of assets they already own, and lease financing, which is all about using an asset without the hassle and cost of buying it.
Perfect. And way down at the other end of the scale, we have all those short-term sources like trade credit and overdrafts. The keywords there are flexibility and speed for day-to-day operations. So I think the biggest takeaway is this. There's no single best way to get financing. The right choice is always going to be the one that perfectly matches the company's stage, its goals, and its timeline. All right, Priya, that was a great session. Let's wrap up with a practical question, the kind of thing we might see on the exam. Imagine a logistics company. It's growing like crazy, and it needs 20 new delivery trucks, fast. Should they get a term loan and buy them, or should they get them on a financial lease? Think about the impact on cash flow, the risk of the trucks becoming outdated, and how it would look on their balance sheet. Try to structure an answer using the concepts we just went over. Thanks for studying with us, and we'll see you in the next one.